Hi everyone, it's Fiona here. It's Friday and it's time for my Friday Five, but it's all new and different this week. So let's share the screen and catch up on what has been happening here at fionamarks.com. So, as you guys all know from last week's newsletter, I now have a mailing list, and the video newsletter that here we are on Friday 5 is now actually also an email. If you're on my mailing list, it's in your inbox now. And but as usual, I still have the 5 things that have captured my imagination for the week. And the first one is thinking about how much are we really impacted by planets, because I've come to astrology much later in life, definitely not as a believer, not as someone who's ever followed her star signs or read those articles in the paper and felt like, oh yeah, that describes me. And so I guess you could call me skeptical. And yet now I finished, these 4 years of my apprenticeship, and I've done hundreds of readings with people. And I can definitely tell you that astrology, Vedic astrology, seems to be able to pass on to people insights that are accurate, that are unique, that are tailored to the person and very specific to what they're going through. So how could that possibly work? And, that's a topic that I would love to research and dive much more deeply into. However, this week, I did come across 2 articles in the science part of my news feed about the physical impacts heavenly bodies have on our physical planet Earth. And the first one that I have here is about the moon and its sodium trail, like a comet, and how that when it's a new moon, that trail falls completely onto Earth, so is really interacting with our atmosphere. And the other article was about Mars being responsible for that zodiacal light that we see at sunrise, sometimes at sunset. I'll see if it's loaded any photos here. Yeah, that kind of glow that you see. And this is all particles coming off Mars, and they happen to hit I think it's a probe on its way to Jupiter or something. So it just really got me thinking about how, although for me, planets, the way I grew up as a Westerner, the kind of science education that I have, they seem just extremely distant. How could they have any impact on anything, let alone astrology? But perhaps they are actually interacting with our world much more than we know. So I thought these articles were really interesting. Why don't you go have a look and tell me what you think? And then I have for you other fascinating conversations that I've been having this week, keeping with the theme of the moon, which we have a new moon tomorrow in Pisces. And this week I sat down with Fernando Raul Castro and spoke to him about the sun and the moon and how they're treated differently in different traditional astrologies. So, for example, in Vedic astrology, they're very clearly allocated as a malefic and a benefic, but a mild malefic and a changeable benefic, whereas in other astrologies, they're kind of neutral. They're so core to our experience of planet Earth, the sun and the moon, that one wouldn't want to allocate, for example, malefic or benefic to those heavenly bodies. So if you're interested in other traditional astrologies like Hellenistic astrology, that would be a great video to check out. And then in the third Fiona 5 this week, I have a talk that I did on the mind and Vedic astrology. And this is something I find really fascinating. How do we understand the mind? And in this talk, I talk about how, as Westerners, we struggle with words for the mind. Like, what's the difference? Where's the delineation point between the brain and the mind and the intellect? Where is that line of consciousness and unconsciousness? And how is that mapped to neurons or not? And some of that, difficulty in describing this experience of consciousness floats over also into astrology, where there are several indicators for the mind, often the moon and Mercury, and often the third house and the fifth house. So in this video, I explain some beautiful, mind-blowing models from Vedic philosophy. I talk about the Sankhya model of how consciousness manifests into material experience. It's a really profound system of thinking that is coherent all the way from God right down to earthworms or something, or earth that the worms are moving around in. It links with Vedic astrology, it links with Ayurveda. All of the insights around healing, how the body works, are all embedded in that philosophy. And also I talk about the 4 functions of the mind. I find that a very practical model too. And then we look at all the different astrological indicators. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, go check out that video. Now, Tamper Tantrums is topic number 4, and we sometimes attribute the moon to our to lunatics, to having that effect on our mind and emotions. But actually in this video, it's part of the astrology and parenting series, and we talk about how much is nature and how much is nurture, and that in your chart, through the Lajatadhyavashtas, you can see the internal stresses that psychologically put pressure on your child that causes behavioral outbursts. So we just examine things like Saturn being starved by Mars, but even things like Venus starving Jupiter and making us always pursue our happiness is just over the rainbow. If we just do this, if we just achieve that, if we just get this, we'll be happy. So yes, if you have children or you're interested in what might be going on inside you psychologically, that was kind of there from birth via planetary energies, you might like to check that out. And then the 5th topic for Friday 5 is a reading, sharing, obviously not a recording of a confidential reading, but sharing the main themes from a chart. And this beautiful chart has several fascinating yogas, which is maybe something that's associated with Vedic astrology more than other astrologies. Yogas are like combinations. Yoga means to connect or to yoke, to link something to something else. And Vedic astrology has an extensive list of combinations. And this chart is beautiful in its balance of just extremely rare and radiant yogas, and at the same time, inner doubts, inner demons that perhaps, although everything on the surface and to others can see all the beauty, there is inside that disquiet. So we explore all of those. If you're interested in what Vedic astrology can possibly share with you or what it can see, maybe go check out that Fiona Friday 5, number 5. And then if you would like to experiment with Vedic astrology, if you want to find the meaning that's hidden in your birth chart, you can click here and book a reading with me. Or of course, you can just come to my website and here in the astrology tab, book reading, and you'll come right here to where you can choose a time that suits you. Now, if you enjoy the video newsletters, but you would prefer to get them in your inbox, don't forget that anywhere on my website, you can click on this subscribe button, and then you will be asked to pop in your name and email address here, and then you're on my list and you'll get the newsletter right into your inbox every week if you prefer that. All right, great to catch up with you. Hope you've had a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Okay, bye everyone.